A bitter wind whipped through the deserted streets as rain fell in thin, icy sheets. At a lonely bus stop, a woman stood shivering, her thin blouse clinging to her as the storm worsened. Most people passing by didn't even glance in her direction, eyes fixed on their phones, hurrying to warmth. But one man noticed. His shoes were worn, his jacket faded, and his hands rough with calluses from long hours of work. Still, without hesitation, he shrugged off his only coat and draped it around her shoulders. He had no idea that this simple act of kindness would alter his entire life. The man's name was Daniel. Life had not been kind to him lately. He worked night shifts at a warehouse, hauling boxes heavier than himself for barely enough money to cover rent in a cramped apartment. Each day was a grind, each night a battle against exhaustion. He carried the weariness of someone who had tasted too many disappointments. Dreams left unrealized, chances slipping away like sand through his fingers. Yet, despite his hardships, Daniel never lost the habit of noticing people. Maybe it was the way his late mother had raised him, to believe that kindness, even in its smallest form, mattered. That evening, after clocking out from another grueling shift, Daniel walked to the bus stop. He could feel the chill seeping into his bones, but he pressed on, thinking only of getting home to his old mattress, and perhaps a cup of tea, if he had enough left. The storm grew harsher, sheets of rain soaking the ground. That was when he saw her, a woman standing under the dim glow of the bus stop lamp, hugging herself tightly, trembling. Her clothes were neat but too light for the biting cold. Something about her posture, proud but vulnerable, pulled at him. He slowed his steps. Others passed by without a second look, but Daniel couldn't. He hesitated for only a moment, then pulled off his jacket, a faded navy piece he had worn for years, the lining frayed at the edges. "Here," he said softly, draping it over her shoulders. She startled, turning toward him with wide eyes. "You'll freeze," she protested, her voice sharp with surprise but carrying a certain refinement. Daniel smiled faintly, shaking his head. "I'll be fine. You look like you need it more." For a moment, their eyes locked. Hers held gratitude mixed with curiosity. His were tired, but there was warmth in them. They didn't speak further. When the bus arrived, Daniel stepped aside to let her board first, then quietly climbed on behind her. He didn't know who she was. He didn't care. To him, she was just a stranger who needed help. To her, he was something rare in a world that too often looked away. The bus jolted forward, rattling through the rain, slicked streets. Daniel found a seat near the back, while the woman remained up front, staring out of the fogged window. The jacket enveloped her in its rough warmth, smelling faintly of detergent and long hours of sweat. For reasons she couldn't explain, she clutched it tighter. Her name was Evelyn Hart. Few would have recognized her in that moment. Stripped of her usual armor of tailored suits and chauffeur-driven cars, Evelyn was the CEO of a fast-growing tech firm, known for her sharp mind and no-nonsense demeanor in the boardroom. To her employees, she was both admired and feared, an untouchable figure of power. Yet tonight, waiting for a bus like anyone else, she felt small and oddly invisible. Her car had broken down miles away, and her phone had died just as the storm began. She had thought she could tough it out until help arrived, but the cold gnawed at her, leaving her teeth chattering. And then Daniel had appeared, ordinary, unpolished, but with a generosity that pierced through the storm more than any coat could. She turned slightly, studying him. He sat with his hands clasped, eyes closed, leaning against the seat as if exhaustion had claimed him the moment he sat down. His shoes were scuffed, his posture weary. She could tell he was not a man of wealth, yet he had given her the only shield he had against the cold. When the bus reached her stop, Evelyn hesitated before getting off. She glanced back at him, intending to return the jacket. But Daniel was already asleep, head resting against the glass, looking peaceful despite the roughness of his life. Something inside her stirred, an ache, a recognition of humanity that her world of polished offices and profit margins often ignored. She tightened the jacket around her and stepped off, carrying it with her into the night. Days passed, and Daniel thought little of the encounter. His jacket was gone, but he shrugged it off. He had others, though none as warm. Life continued its routine rhythm, work, exhaustion, bills. Meanwhile, Evelyn couldn't forget. The jacket still hung in her office, draped over a chair like a quiet reminder of that night. She had washed it, but the memory of the man who gave it lingered. She found herself thinking about him in meetings, wondering about his story. In her world, gestures were calculated, favors traded for advantage. His act, however, had been pure, without expectation. One afternoon, as she reviewed reports of layoffs that her board insisted were necessary, Evelyn felt the weight of it all. Numbers, percentages, cost reductions, cold decisions made in heated rooms. But her mind drifted back to the warmth of that coat, to the man who had less yet gave more. Something shifted inside her. Determined, she set out to find him. It took her assistant several days, calling bus depots, checking routes, until finally they identified him, Daniel Carter, warehouse worker. When Evelyn learned where he lived, she made the unusual decision to go herself. She arrived at a rundown apartment complex, far removed from her glass tower of an office. Climbing the narrow stairs, she found his door slightly ajar, with the faint sound of a kettle whistling inside. She knocked gently. Daniel opened the door, surprise flickering across his face. He recognized her instantly. You're the woman from the bus stop." Evelyn smiled, holding out the jacket neatly folded. "I believe this belongs to you." Daniel scratched the back of his neck, awkward. "I wasn't expecting to see you again. Thought you might have tossed it." Her eyes softened. "No, I couldn't. In fact, I think I owe you far more than a returned jacket." Over tea in his modest kitchen, Evelyn listened as Daniel spoke of his life, his long shifts, his struggles to make ends meet, his quiet acceptance of hardship. There was no bitterness in his tone, only resilience. Evelyn found herself humbled. She had built an empire, yet here sat a man richer in something she couldn't quite name. When she left that night, Evelyn's mind was made up. She called an emergency board meeting the next morning. Weeks later, Daniel received a letter, an offer for a position at her company. Not a charity role, but one that recognized his work ethic, giving him training, growth, and dignity. Confused at first, he accepted. In time, Daniel flourished. His ideas, born from years of labor, helped streamline operations in ways Evelyn's executives hadn't considered. He became not just an employee, but a trusted advisor, and later, a leader within the company. Evelyn, too, changed. She ran her company with a renewed heart, remembering always that behind every number was a human story. Years later, when people asked Evelyn what had sparked her shift in leadership style, she would smile and say, "It was a stormy night, and a man with nothing gave me everything." And Daniel, he never thought much of it. To him, it was just a jacket, just a kindness. But sometimes the smallest acts ripple into lives, changing the course of destiny forever.